Alhamdulillah. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, may peace and blessings be upon our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The morning arrives quietly before the world demands anything from you. Before expectations settle on your chest, before the weight of yesterday whispers its unfinished business. And in that fragile space between sleep and wakefulness, your soul is already answering a question. Will you rise or will you retreat back into heaviness? Laziness is not always a lack of effort. Sometimes it is a tired heart. Sometimes it is a soul that has been running for too long without rest. Sometimes it is grief disguised as exhaustion. Allah reminds us that the heart was never created to be empty of meaning. When the heart loses its why, the body resists the how. And so the morning becomes heavy. The bed feels warmer than purpose. Delay feels safer than effort. Allah says in Surah Furqan that the servants of the most merciful walk gently upon the earth, not rushed, not harsh with themselves, but awake, present, intentional. The Prophet taught us that there is barakah in the early hours, not because mornings are easy, but because they are sincere. Because the world is quieter and the soul is more honest. Laziness often whispers later, but faith gently asks, what if now is sacred? We wake up carrying yesterday's failures, unfinished goals, silent disappointments, and promises we made to ourselves that we could not keep. And the nafs says, why try again? But Iman answers softly, because Allah is not tired of you. There are mornings when even wudu feels heavy, when the body moves but the heart lags behind, when you stand for prayer, yet your thoughts are scattered across fears and worries. And still, that standing counts, that effort is seen. Allah reminds us that He does not burden a soul beyond what it can bear. So if you woke up today, that means this day is within your capacity. Even if it feels overwhelming, laziness is not defeated by force. It is healed by meaning. When you wake up and remember Allah before reaching for the world, you remind your soul who it belongs to. When you say Alhamdulillah while your eyes are still adjusting to light, you shift from resistance to gratitude. Heartbreak makes mornings heavy. Loss steals motivation. Waiting drains energy. Loneliness slows the body down. But Tawakkul teaches us that effort is not wasted when the outcome is entrusted to Allah. You are not asked to control the results. You are only asked to show up sincerely. There are days when you will rise only enough to pray, and that is enough. There are mornings when all you can manage is dua through tired breath, and that is worship. Sabr is not forcing productivity. Sabr is being gentle while remaining committed. Begin your morning with one small act done for Allah alone. One prayer, one verse, one moment of stillness. Let that be your victory over laziness, not perfection, not comparison, but presence. Trust that divine timing is working even when motivation is low. Trust that Allah sees the struggle behind the stillness. Trust that healing unfolds slowly, just like dawn. Wake up surrendered, not pressured. Wake up remembering, not regretting. Wake up knowing that even your smallest effort, when done with sincerity, moves your soul closer to Allah. The moment you open your eyes in the morning, before the world rushes in with its noise and demands, your heart is already choosing a direction. Intention is not something loud or dramatic. It is a quiet alignment. It is the soul whispering to itself why it is here. When you wake up without intention, the day carries you. When you wake up with intention, you carry the day with Allah. Laziness often grows in the absence of purpose. Not because the body is weak, but because the heart feels unanchored. Intention reconnects you to meaning before effort is even required. It reminds you that you are not waking up just to survive another day, but to fulfill a trust. Even a simple intention, formed while still lying in bed, can shift the weight inside your chest. Ya Allah, I rise for you. That sentence alone can soften resistance. Intention turns ordinary actions into worship. Getting out of bed becomes an act of obedience. Washing your face becomes a renewal. Beginning the day becomes an offering, not a burden. When the soul knows why it is moving, the body follows more gently. The heaviness of laziness begins to loosen, not because energy suddenly appears, but because meaning does. Allah looks first at the heart. He looks at the direction you turn toward before the effort shows itself. Intention is a mercy because it allows you to begin even when you feel unprepared. It allows you to show up imperfectly but sincerely. Every morning, when you choose intention over impulse, you remind your soul that purpose comes before productivity. You remind yourself that your worth is not measured by speed, but by sincerity. Before the world has a chance to speak to you, let Allah speak first. There is a tenderness in those early moments when the heart is still uncluttered, when the soul has not yet been pulled in 100 directions. Remembering Allah at that time is not about long supplications or perfect focus. It is about presence. It is about choosing connection before consumption, remembrance before reaction. Laziness often enters when the heart wakes up empty. When the first thing we reach for is distraction, the soul becomes heavier without realizing why. But when the tongue moves with dhikr before the mind moves with worry, something inside begins to settle. Saying Alhamdulillah as your eyes open, whispering Subhanallah as you sit up, letting La ilaha illallah pass through your breath. These are not small acts. They recalibrate the heart. Allah reminds us that it is through His remembrance that hearts find rest. Not excitement, not escape, rest. The kind of rest that gives strength instead of stealing it. When the heart is at rest, the body follows with more ease. The resistance that feels like laziness slowly dissolves into willingness. Remembering Allah early creates an inner boundary. It protects the soul from being defined by tasks, deadlines, or comparisons. It reminds you that before you are anything in this world, you are a servant. And servitude, when embraced with love, brings freedom. The soul stops carrying the weight of proving itself. Even on mornings when faith feels quiet, remembrance keeps the connection alive. You may not feel inspired, but you are still aligned. You may feel tired, but you are not lost. Each word of dhikr becomes a gentle hand lifting the heart, reminding it that it is seen, held, and never alone. Fajr arrives at a time when the world is asleep and the soul is exposed. There are no witnesses except Allah, no applause, no validation, just sincerity. And that is precisely why Fajr carries a unique power. It is not only a prayer, it is a declaration. It says to the soul, you are worth rising for. It says to laziness, you do not own me. Laziness often thrives in disconnection. When the day begins without anchoring the heart, everything feels scattered. Fajr gathers the soul. It pulls the heart back from the edges of distraction and places it gently before its creator. Even when the body feels heavy, the act of standing breaks the illusion that you are stuck. Movement for Allah loosens internal paralysis. Allah reminds us in Surah Al-Isra that the Quran of Fajr is witnessed, not because we are strong, but because Allah honors those quiet efforts made in darkness. When you rise for Fajr, you align your day with discipline rooted in love, not pressure. You teach your soul that obedience is not dependent on mood. There are mornings when Fajr feels rushed, distracted, imperfect, and still, it anchors you. It draws a line between night and day, between surrender and striving. After Fajr, the heart carries a subtle clarity. Decisions feel lighter. Effort feels less forced. The soul remembers its direction. Fajr trains the soul to show up before motivation arrives. It teaches that consistency matters more than emotional readiness. Over time, this quiet discipline spills into everything else. The resistance that once felt like laziness begins to soften, replaced by a steady rhythm of returning to Allah before returning to the world. Laziness often feels overwhelming because we imagine change as something heavy, demanding, and immediate. The soul resists what feels impossible. But Allah, in His mercy, did not design transformation to arrive all at once. He made growth gentle. He made consistency beloved. Small actions carry a power that loud intentions often lack. The Prophet taught that the most beloved deeds to Allah are those done consistently, even if they are small. This teaching is a relief for tired hearts. It tells you that you do not need to conquer the entire day to defeat laziness. You only need to begin. One step taken sincerely carries more weight than grand plans postponed. Small actions quiet the inner voice that says, why bother? They create momentum without pressure. Making your bed, sitting up for a moment of dhikr, opening the Quran for a single verse, These acts do not exhaust the soul, they reassure it. They say you are capable, you are moving, you are not stuck. Laziness feeds on guilt and self-judgment. When we demand too much from ourselves, failure feels inevitable and the heart shuts down. But when the goal is small, success becomes accessible. The soul begins to trust itself again. Confidence is rebuilt not through intensity, but through faithfulness. Each small action, when done for Allah, carries barakah beyond its size. It reshapes identity. You begin to see yourself not as someone who avoids effort, but as someone who shows up quietly. Over time, these small acts weave discipline into the soul. What once felt heavy becomes familiar. What once felt impossible becomes natural. There is a special light that descends in the early hours, a gentleness woven into time itself. The Prophet taught that Allah places barakah in the mornings, and this barakah is not always visible, but it is deeply felt. It stretches what feels limited. It softens what feels heavy. It multiplies what seems small. When you begin your day early with Allah, you are not just gaining time, you are receiving blessing. Laziness often comes from the feeling that effort will not be enough, that no matter how hard you try, the energy will run out, the focus will fade, and the heart will grow tired. Barakah changes this narrative. With barakah, a little strength goes far. A few moments feel expansive. A small effort carries lasting impact. The soul begins to move without forcing itself. When mornings are spent rushing or delaying, the day often feels compressed, as though time slips through your fingers. But when the day is entrusted to Allah early, time begins to serve you instead of chase you. The heart feels less frantic. The mind feels clearer. The soul feels accompanied. Seeking barakah early is an act of tawakkul. It is saying, Ya Allah, I am limited, but you are not. It is choosing alignment over control. Even when productivity is not immediate, peace settles first. And peace is its own form of strength. When you give Allah the first moments of your day, He gives back in ways you cannot measure. Energy appears where you expected depletion. Focus replaces resistance. The day unfolds with a quiet ease that reminds the soul it was never meant to carry everything alone. Laziness is often tangled with guilt. We remember the mornings we wasted, the intentions we broke. Discipline. We promised ourselves and failed to maintain. Those memories quietly follow us into the next day, whispering that we are already behind. And when guilt sits in the heart, movement becomes harder. The soul feels judged before it even begins. But Allah does not ask you to wake up carrying yesterday's weight. He is Al-Ghafur, the one who constantly forgives, and His mercy renews with every dawn. Letting go of guilt is not ignoring responsibility. It is releasing the belief that your past defines your capacity to begin again. Every morning is a fresh invitation, not a reminder of failure. When you punish yourself for unproductive days, you turn growth into a burden. The soul retreats when it feels condemned. But when you offer yourself the same mercy Allah offers you, the heart softens. You begin to move not out of shame, but out of hope. And hope fuels effort far more gently than fear. Allah reminds us that He loves those who return to Him repeatedly, not those who never fall, but those who do not give up. Guilt tells you to hide. Faith tells you to return. Even if yesterday was heavy, today is untouched. Even if motivation was absent, sincerity can still be present. Release the need to make up for lost time. You are not racing against your past. You are walking toward Allah, and He is never delayed. When the heart forgives itself for yesterday, the body feels lighter today. The resistance that felt like laziness begins to loosen, replaced by a quiet willingness to try again. There are mornings when laziness is not a lack of effort, but the exhaustion of waiting. Waiting for answers, waiting for change, waiting for relief that feels delayed. When life unfolds slower than our hopes, the soul grows tired and the body reflects that weariness. Trusting divine timing becomes difficult when the heart is impatient with its own pain. But Allah reminds us that every delay carries wisdom, even when that wisdom is hidden from us. Qadr is not punishment. It is precision. Nothing arrives late and nothing comes early. What is meant for you moves towards you at the exact pace your soul can bear. When you rush yourself, you forget that healing and growth were never meant to be forced. Laziness often appears when we measure ourselves against imagined deadlines. We believe we should be further by now, stronger by now, more disciplined by now. This comparison steals peace. Tawakkul invites you to release the timeline, not the effort, to move sincerely while trusting that Allah controls the unfolding. When you accept divine timing, effort becomes lighter. You stop waking up with panic and start waking up with surrender. You do what you can today, knowing it is enough for this moment. The heart rests in the knowledge that Allah sees both the struggle and the patience behind it. Trust does not mean passivity. It means showing up without carrying the burden of outcomes. It means waking up and saying, Ya Allah, I will try again today, and I leave the results with you. In that surrender, the soul finds ease, and the heaviness that once felt like laziness begins to soften into calm persistence. There is a quiet power in beginning the morning with dua before the heart is crowded with fears and responsibilities. Dua is not a performance. It is a release. It is the soul placing its weight down in front of the one who can carry it. When laziness feels heavy, it is often because the heart is holding too much on its own. Morning dua grounds the soul. It brings scattered thoughts into a single direction. You may not know what the day will demand from you, but dua reminds you that you do not face it alone. Even a few whispered words, spoken honestly, can steady the heart. Ya Allah, help me. Ya Allah, give me strength. These are not signs of weakness. They are signs of awareness. Allah reminds us that He is near, that He responds to the call of the one who calls upon Him. This nearness softens anxiety. It quiets the inner noise that drains energy before the day even begins. When the heart feels heard, the body feels supported. Laziness often stems from emotional overload rather than physical fatigue. Dua unloads that weight. It gives fear a place to go. It allows uncertainty to rest in divine hands. When you ask Allah to guide your day, you release the pressure to control every moment. Morning dua does not always change circumstances immediately, but it changes how you carry them. The soul becomes anchored. The heart becomes calmer. And from that calm, movement becomes possible. What once felt heavy begins to feel manageable. Not because the burden disappeared, but because it is no longer carried alone. Being patient with yourself is not self-indulgence. It is a form of worship when it is rooted in understanding how Allah created the human soul. Sabr is often imagined as enduring external hardship. But some of the deepest patience is practiced inwardly, in the quiet moments when you feel disappointed in yourself. When laziness appears, the instinct is to become harsh, to criticize, to shame the soul into movement. But harshness fractures what gentleness could heal. Allah describes Himself as gentle, and He loves gentleness in all things. When you treat yourself with patience, you mirror a divine quality within the limits of being human. You acknowledge that growth takes time, that healing is not linear, and that faith deepens through consistency, not pressure. This patience does not excuse neglect, but it replaces cruelty with compassion. Laziness often grows when the soul feels unsafe. When every effort is met with self-blame, the heart withdraws. But when effort is met with patience, the soul learns to try again. Sabr with oneself means allowing imperfection without surrendering intention. It means standing back up even when the progress feels slow. Allah reminds us that He is with the patient. This companionship is not reserved for those who endure visibly great trials, but also for those who quietly persist through inner struggle. Each time you choose patience over self-contempt, you turn endurance into devotion. When mornings begin with patience rather than punishment, the heart opens, movement becomes gentler, effort becomes sincere. And laziness loses its grip, not because you forced yourself forward, but because you made space for the soul to heal as it moves. Laziness is often mistaken for physical tiredness, but many times it is the soul that is weary long before the body complains. Emotional fatigue lingers in the heart, unseen yet heavy. It comes from unresolved grief, constant worry, lingering regret, or the weight of unspoken struggles. When the heart carries this weight, even the simplest tasks feel impossible. The body follows the soul's lead, and the result is a heaviness we call laziness. Healing inner fatigue begins with recognition. To acknowledge that the soul is tired is not weakness, it is honesty. It is the first step toward restoration. When you pause to feel what is beneath the resistance, you allow the heart to be heard. Silence, reflection, and dua create a space where the soul can release its burdens gradually, without force. This is not avoidance. It is tending to the root rather than chopping at the leaves. Allah reminds us in Surah Barakah that He does not burden a soul beyond its capacity. Understanding this mercy is crucial when fatigue overwhelms you. The limitations you feel are not failures, they are signs that your soul needs attention. Listening to those signs is a form of worship back. It honors the trust Allah has placed within you. Daily rituals, even small ones, can restore inner energy. Sitting quietly in the morning, reciting a verse of Quran, offering a heartfelt dua, or simply breathing with awareness of Allah's presence replenishes the soul. The more the inner self is nurtured, the lighter the body feels. Laziness loses its grip, not through punishment or willpower alone, but through tending to the invisible exhaustion of the heart, allowing healing to flow into every motion of the day. Effort without trust can feel heavy, as if you are carrying the world on your shoulders alone. Laziness often grows when the heart doubts whether what you do matters, whether your small steps have any value. Tawakkul is the gentle antidote. It does not mean abandoning effort. It means aligning your actions with reliance on Allah, knowing that He sees, guides, and multiplies what is sincere. Effort becomes lighter when it is partnered with trust. Allah reminds us that He loves those who strive while relying on Him. When you wake up and choose to act, even in the smallest way, and place the outcome in His hands, you release the burden of control. The heart relaxes and resistance softens. Laziness often stems from fear. The fear that your effort will fail, that your energy is insufficient, that the day is already lost. Tawakkul replaces fear with calm. A quiet confidence that Allah is sufficient for your needs. When effort and trust work together, actions are no longer forced. Making your bed, performing Fajr, reading a verse of Quran, or setting a small intention becomes meaningful. Each step is nourished by faith. Even if the result is unseen or delayed, the act itself carries reward. This awareness transforms the mundane into devotion, and laziness loses its appeal because the heart is occupied with purpose rather than doubt. Tawakkul also has patience with your own pace. You do not need to do everything at once. You do not need to measure your worth by immediate productivity. Effort, tempered with trust, is a river that flows steadily, not a dam that bursts under pressure. And as the river flows, the soul remembers that it is not alone, that its journey is guided, and that every sincere step, no matter how small, is honored by Allah. Laziness is often labeled as a flaw, a moral weakness, or a failure of will, and yet it can be a quiet messenger from the soul. It appears not to punish, but to signal. It tells you that something within is tired, misaligned, or in need of care. When you see laziness as a signal rather than a sin, the heart shifts from resistance to curiosity. You begin to listen instead of fight. Allah created the human soul with layers that cannot always be rushed. Some days it whispers for stillness. Some days it longs for pause. Ignoring these signals only deepens heaviness. But when you acknowledge the inner call, when you reflect gently on what is causing stagnation, you begin to understand yourself more clearly. Laziness becomes less of an enemy and more of a guide, pointing to areas that need patience, attention, or rest. The Prophet taught that mercy begins with awareness and kindness, and that includes being merciful to your own soul. When you reframe laziness as a sign rather than a fault, you stop judging yourself for what you feel and start nurturing what you need. This reframing transforms internal struggle into conscious care. Motivation returns not through force, but through alignment with the soul's needs. Even when the body resists, the heart can act gently, taking small steps that honor both effort and rest. Each active movement becomes intentional. Each small victory becomes a source of barakah. Laziness no longer defines you because you have learned to liste. And to its message, respond with compassion and continue walking toward purpose at a pace your soul can sustain. The morning holds a unique stillness, a gentle pause before the world demands your attention. In that quiet, before notifications, noise, and obligations reach your ears, you have the chance to create space for the soul. Stillness is not emptiness. It is presence. It is a moment to hear the whispers of your heart and the subtle guidance of Allah. When the day begins with rushing, the soul fragments and laziness often creeps in as a response to overwhelm. But when you cultivate stillness, even briefly, the heart becomes centered and movement follows more naturally. Stillness allows reflection. It gives the mind permission to notice what truly matters. Without it, actions become mechanical and effort feels heavy. But in those quiet minutes, your intentions can align with purpose. Your heart can breathe before it carries the weight of responsibility. The simple act of pausing, even to sit in silence, recite a verse, or offer a short dua becomes an anchor for the day. It reminds the soul that effort is not a demand, but a choice offered in love for Allah. Allah teaches us that hearts find rest in His remembrance. When the morning begins with calm awareness, you are inviting divine presence into every subsequent moment. Laziness loses its grip not because the body is forced to act, but because the soul feels supported and oriented. Stillness is a daily training for attention and intention, a practice that reshapes your relationship with time, energy, and faith. It shows the soul that even brief pauses have value, that quiet moments carry depth, and that every day can begin with grace rather than pressure. Surrendering at the start of the day is not giving up. It is a quiet strength that reshapes the soul. It is the act of placing your heart, your intentions, and your energy into the hands of Allah before the world demands anything from you. Laziness often grows from the illusion that you must control everything, that you are solely responsible for every outcome. Surrender dissolves that illusion, replacing it with peace, trust, and clarity. When you wake up and begin the day surrendered, the heart moves differently. You act with intention, but without pressure. You strive, but without the fear of failure pressing down. You plan, but with the understanding that Allah's wisdom surpasses human perception. Every step, no matter how small, becomes meaningful because it is paired with reliance on the one who sees what is hidden, knows what is best, and never overlooks effort. Surrender also softens self-criticism. Laziness often whispers, "You are not enough." Surrender whispers back, "I am in Allah's care, and my sincerity matters more than perfection." The soul, when released from the burden of controlling outcomes, finds ease. Motivation becomes gentle rather than forced. Action becomes purposeful rather than frantic. The heart feels seen even when productivity is slow, because sincerity is honored by Allah beyond human measure. Morning surrender reminds the soul of its true dependence. It shifts the focus from achievement to devotion, from performance to presence. When effort is wrapped in trust, the heaviness of resistance begins to lift. Even small steps carry weight because they are offered not to the world, but to Allah. This practice transforms mornings from a battle against laziness into a sanctuary of peace, intention, and gentle movement toward purpose. The mornings you rise with intention, remembrance, and surrender are not just moments in time. They are declarations of the heart, proof that laziness does not define you. Every small action, every whispered dua, every patient step is a thread weaving discipline, faith, and peace into your soul. Remember, it is not perfection that earns reward, but sincerity. It is not speed that measures worth, but presence. Laziness loses its grip when the heart anchors in Allah, when effort is paired with trust, and when the soul learns to move gently yet consistently. Let every morning be a renewal, a quiet victory over resistance, and a testament that even the heaviest heart can rise when it rises with Allah. Your journey does not require perfection. It requires persistence, faith, and the courage to begin again each day, no matter how small the step.